Hello everybody, I'm Carlos Ramirez and I'm here to introduce to you our new conference podcast. And why a podcast? Well, I'm glad you asked. We, the annual conference, want to be closer to all our local congregations. We are in a season of rebuilding and we have each other to develop and recreate the new Oklahoma United Methodist Church. We want to bring the latest information, raise ministries, raise leadership, lay and clergy, but ultimately, we want to celebrate that our local congregations, our districts, our conference, and our denominations are a power for good. And better yet, God is using our local congregations, our districts, our conference, and our denomination to bring, to spread, to be a witness of the goodness, the peace, the unity, the healing, the hope, and love to our communities and our state, our nation, and our world. Thus, this podcast is a vehicle we want to use to herald what God is doing in our midst. So how often and what are we going to be talking about in these podcasts? Well, we'll have these podcasts monthly, and there will be interviews, an array of interviews. The first one is going to be for the district superintendents. The district superintendent will tell us about a particular church or ministry in her or his district. This district superintendent will tell us of the difference this ministry is doing in the lives of the local communities and congregations. And furthermore, we will hear of ministries that can be adaptable to different contexts across our state and our conference. We would also like to hear about our laity and the ministry, testimonials of how their faith in Jesus Christ has transformed their lives and the lives of many people around them. And finally, we will interview a representative of the 5 different dreams discerned as our strategic approach for our conference. New churches for new people, lighthouse congregations and revitalized churches, impacting poverty, healthy clergy leading healthy congregations, and new leaders for an emerging conference. How can I get this podcast? We will make it available through an array of platforms, social media, of course, YouTube, and whatever other way you get your audio podcasts. How can I get involved? Well, please send us your nominees of leaders and or churches that are doing great ministry in the local communities and that are adaptable to across our conference. Let us know what kind of news is relevant to you. What stories do you need to hear more about? We want to create a catalog of resources that can be used in the local congregations for sermons, for Sunday school classes, for small groups, and any other creative way you come up with. And the name of our podcast, is Circuit Update. Why Circuit? Because we want to harness the power of, or the history of the circuit rider that will tell us, and that will go around many churches. So we want to go all across our conference and tell the stories that are happening and what God is doing in these local congregations. And the update is because we want to, as the name said, update you on whatever is happening all across our conference. So please pray for our local church. Please pray for our conference. Pray for our denomination. We are on this journey together. And this is your communications ministry continuing to serve you in the best way possible. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day. Hello everybody, I'm here today to this inaugural podcast with Reverend Dr. Joe Harris. I'm so happy that he accepted this interview to start off this podcast. He's going to share his words of wisdom, and he's going to share what is some about his ministry, something about what he's going to be doing after retirement, if you will, and also some things that he will be doing besides ministry that he's going to continue to do for our conference and for our denomination. So I'm so happy that you're here, Dr. Harris. Welcome.
Thank you.
Without introduction, I would like to ask you the first question: what was the most rewarding thing that you had during your ministry?
The most rewarding thing that I had during my ministry, boy, there were several high points and several things that were rewarding. But if I were to think about the most rewarding, I think it was my ordination. This was way back in '94, and I was originally not a United Methodist. We chose United Methodism because it was fit where we were theologically and where we are theologically. And it also was a place that we were comfortable with. My wife and I, we began the United Methodist Ministry in Tulsa, and we went to this church. This African-American retired pastor was serving at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Tulsa. That church doesn't exist now. But he was patient with us, he was calm, and he allowed us to really explore what it might mean to join this denomination. And so we did. We went through in seminary, I originally was going to be a professor, and so I went through the MA program rather than to the Master of Divinity program.
Okay.
But then there were some at the seminary I went to, which was ORU Seminary, who convinced me that one, I would be more comfortable being United Methodist than that would be in a more Pentecostal conservative denomination that we were a part of at the time. And then we went ahead and began to explore that, and particularly with students saying, hey, you need to be United Methodist, and then with the African American pastor at St. Luke's. And my wife and I were sure after a while, after we had visited several churches, et cetera, that this was the place that we needed to be. And so to be ordained as a United Methodist, Bishop John Wesley Hart ordained me at Boston Avenue Church at that time. Was just the thrill of my life. And I've been on that mountaintop for quite a while, and so happy that we made that choice. There were a lot of choices out there we could have made, but this was the one we felt God wanted us to make. And the journey that we've had since that ordination has just been one that if you'd have told me that at the time, I'd said, what are you drinking? But God has a way of not showing you everything at once, but helping you through your journey, through its highs and lows, to get to where He wants you to be.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you. So, if the highest was your ordination, what was your toughest part of ministry?
The toughest part was probably when I became a district superintendent. And why was that tough? One was because I was the first African American superintendent in Oklahoma's history, and we were appointed to the Ardmore district, which at the time, of course, had never had, because nobody else had had an African American superintendent. And there were some who just at that time didn't know what that would mean for the churches or for, and I didn't know what it meant. Now, I mean, one thing about superintendent, that they appoint you, but then they throw you out there. It's kind of like learning how to swim by being thrown in the deep end. And so what happened is we found some folks who were there who were a little resistant to us being there. And they expressed it, both to the bishop and to others, that perhaps disappointment should take place in another place. So I you know, when you someone once told me, well, Joe, you've been a pioneer. And you know, read about pioneers in the Old West. They went out there first, and sometimes they encountered some difficulties, and sometimes they even got shot. Well, I said I didn't want that, but I knew that there would be some challenges. Whenever you're the first to do anything, that there's some you just have to maneuver through to get there. So we had some difficult times at times, but we also had some glorious times. So God was with us every step of the way. We knew we could get through the difficult times and use that to help us maneuver through the good times and to. But one thing that I always was convinced that God's people were there. Sometimes others were more vocal, but God's people were there, and that we could get through all those difficult times to understand that, hey, this is what molds and shapes us as Christians. If it was all easy, then anybody would do it, and everyone would be able to achieve things. But there's always a challenge, and the biggest challenge is always to depend on the Holy Spirit and on God to get you through those difficult times. And you know you can make it as long as God is with you. And of course then you have concerns about your family. What does that mean to them too? And so you take all that into consideration, and you know that in the midst of all the challenges that are up there, there's also the opportunity. And if you don't take the advantage of those opportunities, then the question is, who will? And so we got through them, and God made us stronger, and hopefully we showed some things that got people to appreciate the ministry that we helped provide at the time.
So how many years do you serve as a district superintendent, and how many churches were under your supervision?
Okay. I served for 7 years as superintendent, had 67 churches, at that time in the district. And Bishop Dan Solomon was the one who appointed me. And one of the interesting things about Bishop Solomon, as some of you might recall, is he told his superintendents, I want you to do two things. One is, as soon as you get on the ground, visit every church. So I spent the summer visiting every church in the district.
Wow.
And then I turned around and visited every church for charge conferences, because we didn't do charge conferences together like they're doing now.
Right.
So I think I put nearly 10,000 miles on that car just in the summer.
Summertime.
And I said, no wonder they pay you the salary so you can replace your cars every 10 minutes. But it was something. In a way, I'm glad I did it because everything was so new to everybody. Just saying hi was a big step for some congregation, and hearing from them was a big step for me, because I got to hear where they were, what some of their hopes and dreams were, etc., apart from any regular, quote, church business. Then when I came back from the charge conference, it wasn't the first time they were being involved with what we were trying to do as ministry, but I had known a little bit about the church. I could speak with them, and the only thing I had to do that was the hardest thing of all was to resist all the food that was being offered. I think I must have gained about 10 pounds because I was one of those guys that said, well, I can't say no to anything because they'll think I'm insulting him. So every dessert that was put in front of me, every happened to be my favorite. And so after a while you learn, one, you don't have to eat it all there. You can take some home with you, usually. And two, you can say no to some things, and people will be okay with it. In those years, those first few years, I think we got to know each other as a district, and I got to know the churches, and more importantly, I got to know individuals, because we're more than just a name that's on our church, but we're individuals and men and women of Christ, and if we get to know one another, I find that people's anxiety is usually a lot lower.
Yeah, great. We have a saying in Mexico that because it's kind of customary for district superintendents and also pastors to be house to house, kind of visiting. Yeah. So we have a saying that roughly translates that never trust a skinny pastor, because you have to go to a house and they will serve you, and then you eat, and then you go to the next and they serve you and you eat. So never trust a skinny pastor. So that sounds like that too.
That's right. They didn't have to worry about that about me at that time. That's for sure.
Is there anything you wish you have done or completed before your retirement time?
Yeah, I got to think, when you get to retirement, you start thinking about those things. I wish I had done this. I wish I had completed that. I don't have any regrets about things that I didn't get a chance to complete, because God gives us one lifetime, and you do the best you can with what you have in different circumstances. Having served as a DS, as a senior pastor, as a general secretary of the church, there were just unique opportunities that God gave me. And then having chaired a committee of the General Conference that no one else had done before, those were just unique things. And going through being a part of the World Methodist Council for the years I was part of that, got me to see not just North American Methodism, but Methodism across the world, and not just United Methodism, but in the various denominations that are represented by the World Methodist Council. So I got to do all that. And I think in the midst of thinking about all of that, the thing I wish I could have accomplished more was getting, particularly in this conference, getting more people of diversity as involved as possible with the local churches, with the annual conference, etc. I still think that's a big challenge for United Methodists, and particularly for Oklahoma and United Methodists. How do we help diversify our church, our conference, and our denomination? Because that's what the kingdom's going to look like. Yeah. I mean, if I plan to go to heaven, it's not going to be an all-white heaven or an all-black heaven or an all-whatever heaven. It's going to be all God's creation heaven. Yeah. And so, therefore, why not begin that process now and not wait till then? And so I wish I'd have been able to do more in that area than I was able to do. But God doesn't call one person to do everything, just to do what you can at the time you can do it. And so I think I tried to do the best I could with what I had. But that's one of the challenges I think the conference still has.
Sure.
And as long as I'm around, I'll try to help us move in that direction.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes. And we all need that, and to get that serious about that. So, what are your words of wisdom for clergy and laity? Now that all these years of experience and all your, as you said, your unique ways of serving God and our denomination, what will you say to our clergy and to our laity?
Well, I would say to the clergy first is that one of the things that I found out being a superintendent and then being on cabinets for 18 years, I think that's some kind of record too. I don't think that's happened across the denomination, is that the most important thing that you'll have is preaching will be important, visitation will be important, but I have found that the most important thing that you will need is your relational skills. We've got a lot of several wonderful preachers across the conference, across the denomination, who can't relate themselves out of a paper bag. And so therefore, people love their preaching, but they said, he or she doesn't relate to me at all, or doesn't relate to the congregation, etc. Getting to know people, we're about people. That's part of everyone's ministry in the church, to be about people. And if you isolate yourself in an office or you try to avoid people, you do the very last thing that scriptures ever talk about. That's why Jesus was always among people. And I think actually the worst time he had was when he was in the desert and he was being tempted, because then there was no one else around but him and the enemy. And I think he reminds us that, hey, our ministries are about people. And so I would encourage clergy, if you don't have relational skills, get them. You can always get those trains, etc. And get yourself invested in people. Now, sometimes we get suspicious. What does that person want? I told somebody the other day, I said, hey, I always assume that people have your best interests in mind until they prove differently. Then that way you don't hold anything back. You try to relate to them genuinely. You're not suspicious that what do they really want. Right. And my experience is most people do want the best for you, as they hope you want the best for them. And so I would encourage that. As far as for the laity, I would say that if the laity would continue to not just experience church on Sunday for 1 hour, but try to live church throughout their entire lives, get as involved with Bible study as much as you can so you can study the scriptures. And the reason why this is important is because I told someone the other day who was a little reluctant about church, or who had felt like they had been in church all their life and hadn't gotten much out of it. And I said, well, what would you do? Well, I went to worship services. And I said, well, that's great you went to worship services, but guess what? I would never become a violinist if all I heard was violin being played 60 minutes one day a week for the rest of my life. I wouldn't learn anything. You learn because you study and you interact with other people about the Bible. One of the things that is pretty clear in Scripture is that we're not to forsake the fellowship among one another. And that's more, since I was Secretary of United Methodist Men, I would say that's more than just a meet and eat experience. It's a time of study, a time of interacting, a time of disagreeing. It's okay, we all don't have to agree about everything, but we have to give people a chance to tell us and to do things that will help enlarge our own faith, help us consider things that we might not consider if we're just studying by ourselves, and vice versa. You can help them in the same way too. So I think that one of the things that I'm looking forward to, which is I think the next question you're going to ask is for in retirement, is being able to be more involved with the local church. The schedule I had while working full time really didn't allow me to be as involved as I'd like to be with the local church. And so I'm looking forward to doing that, to interacting with God's people and to hear from them, and they may hear a few things from me, and hopefully we'll continue to grow in grace together, because that's what I think is ultimately what God wants all of us to do as we become more perfected in our faith. Not perfect behavior, but more perfected in love and in the faith that we proclaim. So that the world, when they get out there, they can say, hey, there is a difference between this group and the group that may not be coming to church. Particularly our young people, which is a concern for all of us, so that they can know what the word means and what it can mean to them in an everyday life, and not in some judgmental way, but in a way that will help them to grow, and they can also help us to grow, because they'll help us consider things that we hadn't considered. And hopefully some wisdom that we have would help them too.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's awesome. I like that. So, well, you started answering the next question, which is, what would you do what were you going to do in retirement? Obviously ministry, but beyond ministry as well.
Right. Well, some things beyond ministry that I hope to do is, I used to love to go fish until I did all this other stuff and didn't feel like I had time to go fish. So I told my son the other day, I said, when I'm retired, actually officially retired, we're going to go fishing and do some things that we used to do when he was a little younger. And of course, I want to spend some time with my wife, traveling some. I did a lot of traveling when I was active. However, a lot of that was by myself, because she had to stay home with kids, etc. And also we couldn't afford the other ticket at the time. But now we have some time. One of the things that I was telling somebody the other day that we like to do is go to the presidential libraries.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been to several now, and so we're going to make that a part of our intentionality in retirement, to try to visit all of them before we, while we can, because you do things while your health is good. And I'm always fascinated by them, because they're different than the normal libraries, and you get to remember things, but you get to see things you never knew ever happened while they were present. And that'll be presidents I liked and some presidents I didn't like so much. But hey, they were leaders for reasons, and I think if you can learn from that, you could help impart some of that knowledge to others. So we'll be doing things like that, and then my wife tells me I got to clean out the garage. So pray for me about that one. We'll get that one and some other things, and that's one of the things about retirement. You think about everything is so different. I don't have to be in office every day. I don't have to do things that I'm used to doing all the time. So I'll just have a new office. It'll be at home, and I'll have a new boss. It'll be my wife. So I'll just say, like I did to the bishops, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And we'll move forward on all these things.
That's awesome. That's great. And I know that you're going to be more intentional, as you said, being in the local church.
That's true. Of course, I'll still be conference secretary and still be doing some part-time things with the conference. But in the midst of that, I'll have a lot of different things to explore. One guy asked me a few years ago, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, I think I will be a school bus driver. And he said, well, why would you do that? One is because one of my first ministries was working with children in a program called Destination Discovery over in Tulsa in low-income housing. Oh, cool. And I missed that in a lot of ways. In fact, my very first job was being a counselor at a day summer camp in Springfield, Massachusetts, with little children. And I said, I'm always fascinating because there's so much innocence there that they say things that you'd never expect an adult would ever say, but it would come out, and the school bus driving things to me would mean, don't know if I'll ever get to do that, but my mind wants to do that, just to help to transport these children to where they may need to go. So we'll see. A lot of that are dreams, and we'll see if what develops and what's not, and what God presses us to do. But that's the intent. That's the intention. Probably do some tutoring with some young kids too, because I want to help mold and shape this next generation coming up.
That's great. Well, you heard it here first. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you have done. Thank you for being so, accommodating and all your years of service. But as a personal note, thank you for being, so welcoming to me and to this new transition. So welcoming and patient, and it's just been wonderful. And this, as I said, this a few weeks now, transition. So I appreciate it, all of what you've done and your mentorship and what can learn from you. So thank you for all of this. And thank you again from the name of the conference. Thank you for all you have done for us and the legacy you have left behind.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Carlos, and all those. It's just been a thrill to me to work with the people in this building and the people in communications, the board members we've had. I mean, when you look over the years, you always realize that any success that you may or may not have, it didn't depend on just you. It depended on a lot of other people, and we've had some great staff, and I had that as General Commissioner, United Methodist Men. I had it in the local church when I was a pastor there. I had it when I was an associate pastor. It takes people. That's why I reminded the clergy, it takes people to make this thing run and to help them to see how Christ can help enrich all of our lives. And so thank you for what you do and for what you're going to be doing, and I'll be cheering.
Thank you. Just keep us in your prayers.
I sure will.
Yes. Well, this was, as I said, our first podcast. Thank you, Dr. Harris, and keep tuned for the next one. So thank you, and see you soon.